This episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by Apparition Scents, an outdoor and sporting goods company based in Dilliner, Pennsylvania. All of their scents developed and hand bottled with strict attention being paid to every detail. Contact them today at 724-998-7646 or check them out at apparitionscents.com. 100% lethal or your money back guaranteed. Get a hold of them today at 724-998-7646 or check them out at apparitionscents.com. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. Tonight we have special guest Lainey Smith, 2022 ASA Women's Open Pro Rookie of the Year, and she also placed third at the IBO Worlds in the Women's Pro Division. She is also a graduate of WVU, and she was part of the archery team there. And I also have Dan Hall with me this evening. We're dealing with some technical difficulties this evening. Lainey's in a part of West Virginia where you really don't have good service when it comes to internet, Wi-Fi, and things like that. So just
pretty much
we'll get as much of this done as we can. So Lainey, during the break we were talking about different Reinhardt tournaments and things like that, some smaller tournaments that you and your family kind of do on the side. There's one coming up at Pipestem State Park. Do you plan on attending that one?
Right now, I got it on the schedule, you know, as long as the Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we can make it. But, those tournaments to me, they're super important, especially this time of year. During the off season, we're not going to see another big major tournament until the Lancaster Archery Classic in January, end of January. So, right now, everyone's minds have kind of shifted off of tournament archery and are kind of starting to go towards hunting again. And I think just kind of participating in local shoots, supporting your local archery club or going to our Reinhardt 100, those type of things, they really keep you sharp. And I think that's really important because sometimes I think even when I'm getting ready for hunting season, you can slack a little bit. You might take more time. You might just shoot a couple arrows versus, when I would normally shoot 150 at the minimum.
Wow.
So those type of shoots, yeah, wow. They're usually fun. Shoots that, you get to meet more people in industry, which to me is super important. Just that networking, people, getting to know who people are. And that's just how you meet different opportunities is by going to those big shoots that, might not necessarily be a big national tournament, but you can take away something from it. And usually those shoots, they're just fun and they can have, 100-yard bombs where you're just out there, just practicing and just makes you better at 20 and 30.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to stay, keyed up and on your game when it comes to that and everything tuned up.
So is that seem like a big thing when archery season, hunting season comes about, they kind of cancel most of the tournaments and everything?
Yeah, I mean, tournament archery almost doesn't exist, whenever it's hunting season, because most of your tournament archery, you think of guys like, especially like Levi Morgan, like he's notorious. That last tournament's over, he's on a plane going somewhere out west, it's hunting season.
Right.
I know left IBO Worlds, I had a friend, she went to Montana and went pronghorn hunting, so I mean, it's like a switch is flipped. Even if there was tournaments, I think during hunting season, people just, they're over it. They're sick of it. I know whenever IBO Worlds was done, I was just ready to be done with tournaments because if you think about it, from February really to right about now, a couple weeks ago, we're at a tournament somewhere in the country at the very least every other weekend.
Yeah, and there's a lot of traveling with that too, isn't there?
Oh yeah, our very first tournament, of course, our schedule is going to look a lot the same as what it was this past year. And, this past year we had our first major tournament, Lancaster, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's at the end of January. I didn't go to IBO Indoor Worlds, but for those who did, that was a couple weeks later in Ohio. And then we had Foley, Alabama, end of February. We were driving down to Foley, and it's just from that point on, pretty much from Foley, it's every other weekend. I think we did Foley, and then the next weekend was North Carolina, And then we were going to Louisiana, Fort Benning, Georgia. I mean, it's just all over the place. So by the time we get to this point, end of August, we're just kind of ready to just be in a tree stand and take a break.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'd some of those trips are 16, 17 hours long. You're coming from West
Oh yeah.
Virginia and you're going to these places. I know there's some in Columbus, Georgia.
Yep.
And like you was saying, the one there in Foley, Alabama, that pretty much starts off the competition archery season, does it not?
Yep, it's the very first ASA of the year, and we've already got our schedule for next year, and it's the first one again. So it's kind of nice because at that point, it's like we're ready to start shooting again, and we're ready to get into it. We've had a long, especially up here in West Virginia. A lot of the ASA shooters, they're South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, so they don't understand the struggle we go through sometimes. But usually by that down there, and it's Alabama, and it's might be 60 degrees at the end of February, and we're just, singing praises to feel some warmth. But that's pretty well what. And from there on, I mean, it's just hell on wheels the whole way. I mean, balls to the wall. I mean, end of August, we're somewhere weekend at the very least.
So let's talk a little bit more about your equipment, Dan. You want to go ahead and talk to her about that?
Well, I got one thing first before that. Now, you was talking about indoor, outdoor. What's your preferred? Would you rather shoot the outdoor circuit or do you enjoy the indoor as well?
Oh, I enjoy indoors, but 3D is my game. So, I mean, that's
okay.
Indoors to be better at 3D, if that makes sense. Indoors is very technical, very precise. 20 yards, most anybody who shoots a bow shoots 20 yards. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're a backyard hunter or top level professional archer. 20 yards is basic. It's where everybody starts. But at the same time, every little mistake you make, it's going to show at 20 yards. So I spend the winter shooting indoors. I've already got my indoor bow set up and I've been shooting a little bit. I spend time on my form. I practice just my mental game. What are some of the thoughts that are going through my head when I'm at full draw? Because that stuff is super important. Are you at full draw telling yourself that you're confident, you've done this a million times, or are you telling yourself what happens if that pin just moves a little left or a little bit right and then you're causing anxiety? So that's what indoors does.
Sure. Yeah, and you're breathing too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just your form, your timing, everything, and if you can get that, I always tell people, if you can shoot a Vegas 300 round indoors and be able to judge yardage, which in my class, that's what we do, we judge yardage, then, you'll be an excellent 3D shooter. So by the time 3D starts, I try to be that 300 30x shooter in indoors as much as I can, because that's, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. And it just makes it so much easier to go outside and shoot if you're able to have that form down and everything else.
So on the lines of it, talking about equipment now, you was talking about you have an indoor bow and you have a 3D bow.
Mm-hmm.
What's your differences? I mean, is there a lot of differences in the way you set your bows up for indoor to outdoor 3D targets?
A little bit, yeah. So indoor, usually, I actually shoot a TRX 36 from Matthews, so that's going to be what my indoor bow is. And then for 3D, I shoot a TRX 34. So the 34 to me is a little bit more versatile outdoors. A little bit easier for me to maneuver. Outside, you might be shooting shots that are straight up a hill, straight down a hill. Might have some tight lanes, stuff like that. And I get around personally at my draw length, and that's another thing that's really important when you're choosing a bow and those different axle to axles. You see a lot of guys out there shooting 40-inch bows, 38-inch bows, and they work great for them. They shoot them great. But personally for me, as a woman with a 26.5-inch draw length, those big bows they don't work for me. So indoors, I get away with the 36 a lot easier because we're just standing flat, shooting 20 yards. And for me, the longer axle to axles, the good thing about those is they're a little bit more stable of a platform. The shorter the bows, they're really, a little bit more squirrely, and you might have to change your stabilizer setups, changing different types of weights, maybe take off more than you would. a more forgiving bow, so to say. They, to me, they just hold a little steady, but
Yeah.
I would be nervous to take a longer bow, outdoors. So,
How big of an issue is riser height for the different aspects of it?
I mean, honestly, like if I had to shoot my 34 indoors, I would. I'd be totally fine with it because I've had so much success with it. I just know the feel of that bow. I know that I can get it set up. I know that it'll shoot. So the 34, the thing I like about it is just the confidence in it. And that's another super important thing is just having confidence in your equipment and you're shooting the best stuff. If you get out there and you're like, well, I don't know if this thing's really shooting the best that it really could be shooting. Well, if you're thinking those things in your mind, you're automatically not going to shoot the best that you actually can. You might think you are, but you're not. Subconsciously, you're going to be doing totally wrong. That's a whole nother thing is shooting indoor bows. You're training that subconscious. You're training your subconscious what you want it to do consciously. So that way, whenever you get out there in high pressure situations, that subconscious can just take over and it knows what to do and then it'll be flawless. So it's really important. Okay. I'd say the other big thing about my arrows is arrows are a huge thing. So when I'm shooting 3D outdoors, I'm making sure that one, I have speed. ASA, we have a speed limit, so it's really important that you're able to meet that speed limit because if you're shooting, too much less, you're basically just kind of giving yourself up a little bit and you're giving other people an advantage on you. So it's important that one, have speed, aerodynamics. In the women's class, you're going to see a lot of different types of arrow diameters because one, a lot of times women are not pulling 70-pound bows. I think actually for most of the organizations, our max is 60, which I do shoot 60 all the time because, that would be a disadvantage to not utilize that. But some women,
sure, and that's a good poundage.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. I personally don't feel like I need anymore. It's a good place to be, but at the same time, there's women who can't achieve that. So you might go out there and you might standard diameters or skinny arrows, and then you might see some. Like for me, I shoot a 23 diameter arrow. So that's considered, a bigger shaft, a line catcher, so to say. Now indoors, shooting my 36, I'll shoot 27s. And so those are the biggest arrows that they make. Those are the biggest ones you can use, even if they were to make bigger ones. A lot of times on the 3D ranges, men shoot 25, 27s. That's totally not uncommon because a lot of them, Dan McCarthy's shooting 73 pounds. I think Levi Morgan's shooting like around 71, 72. So they're able to achieve that. They're able to achieve those specs that you need in order to shoot those arrows because they're typically stiffer. And the stiffer they are, the more poundage, the more draw length you need. So, yep.
Yep, right.
But, you're just trying to hit the same spot over and over again at the same distance. So I can get away with shooting 27s just for 20 yards, but not 3D.
Right. Yep, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Dan Hall is rolling with the questions tonight. I hear you, buddy. We're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back with Lainey Smith. This episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by Ghost 802, a sports team based in Vermont. Their goal is to promote safe and ethical hunting and to raise the youth to share the same passion for the archery, hunting, and the outdoors as they did growing up. For more information, check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Let them know that you heard about them right here on the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. All right, guys, we're back on the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. We have a little bit of technical difficulty. Like I said earlier, we lost Lainey Smith, 2022 ASA Rookie of the Year in the women's division. But we will have her back on our archery launch week, and that will be September the 19th through September the 24th. So be sure and tune in during that. That's when we're going to start our first episodes that will be live, not actually recorded live, but they will be on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Play, or wherever you find and get your podcast. So make sure you tune in during that week. We are going to be doing an episode every night, and we will try and upload those every the night after. So we're going to go ahead and sign off for this evening. Dan, thanks for being with me. And again, we'd like to thank Lainey
Thanks, Michael,
Smith
for having me.
And like I said, she will be back with us during our archery and tech tips and things during our archery launch week. So signing off for this evening. Everybody, thank you.
Great to have her back again.
Yep. She was a great guest. This has been one of the best episodes that we've had so far during this segment that we've done.
Yep. She's very knowledgeable on the archery aspect of things.
Yep, definitely. All right, Dan. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good evening.